Thank you very much, Johanna. I too would like to acknowledge the Palawa and Pakna of Lutruwita, in Tasmania, the land on which sea forest operates, and the sea country which we farm. And I would also like to pay my respects to Tasmanian elders, past, present. I guess I'm here as an entrepreneur who's commercializing some very exciting science in the climate technology space. That science, or that foundational science, came from Australia's peak scientific body, the CSIRO, and incredibly exciting at the time. What they were doing was feeding 30 different varieties of seaweed to livestock to see the impact it was going to have on methane emissions. If I could just go to the next slide, please. Whilst incredibly exciting science, there was a key bottleneck, and that was that no one knew how to grow this seaweed, and there was no commercial sort of seaweed aquaculture industry in Australia. So in order to get this solution to scale and for it to have its environmental impact or reach its environmental potential, we had to, or somebody had to, understand how to close the bottleneck of cultivation and supply. And Sea Forest is a company that's 5 years old, and we've put together a team of the most remarkable scientists in this space to solve these challenges. So, as well as working with a network of Australian and New Zealand universities to assist us, we're now in a position where we are leading the way in the supply of livestock feed supplements for methane mitigation, and we're working with some amazing Australian beef and dairy companies on that pathway to commercialisation, as well as supporting a number of peer-reviewed academic trials papers that are now in the public domain using our products that continue to show that, as was shown by or demonstrated by the CSIRO back in 2016, that the product is both efficacious and has no impact on food safety or animal welfare. We'll go to the next slide, please. And so we're a company that's very much focused on the environmental challenge of climate change, but our goal through the supply of this product we call sea feed, which is the seaweed-based product, to industry, is to have to provide not only the environmental benefits but tangible commercial benefits, so that our impact can only be realised through collaboration. If I could just go to the next slide. I guess what we're talking about is a gas, and we're targeting is methane. Methane is 28 times the warming impact of regular carbon dioxide in our atmosphere, and so is a really important gas we need to target. It's short-lived, but is very, very potent. And methane from livestock, it represents about 75% of our agricultural emissions, so it's a huge contributor that a lot of people don't really understand. If I could go to the next slide, please. And what we're looking at is about 3 billion tonnes of CO2 equivalent being emitted by these animals each year, and a world where not only are we setting some very firm climate targets around the world, with Australia now having a 43% emissions reduction target, but also with Joe Biden's introduction of the methane pledge, a 30% reduction in methane emissions by 2030. This is getting more and more attention, and also what we're finding is that countries around the world are responding differently to this challenge, with places like the Netherlands, where the government is buying back dairy farms and reducing the number of head to address nitrous oxide and methane emissions, and in places like Ireland, where they're actually mandating the reduction in livestock by 2030 in order to tackle it. Here in Australia, we're trying to take a collaborative approach. If you'd like to go to the next slide, please. But we still have very ambitious climate targets. So Meat and Livestock Australia is our peak body. They have a meat body. They have a 2030 carbon neutral target, and in Dairy Australia has a 30% reduction by 2030. There's no way they can get there without these feed supplements. So the commercialisation of our science is critical. And if we just go to the next slide, the at scale supply of this product is critical. I just think one of the things I wanted to talk about really quickly, I know we are talking about the commercialization of exciting IP and science, but just thought I'd briefly talk about the way that works, and that is that the way this seaweed works, as bioactives within the seaweed that react with enzymes inside the rumen that prevent the formation of methane and divert that, which would have been expelled by the animal as a gaseous waste product, into energy it uses to grow. So we actually get an increase in productivity as well as the environmental benefit. And then through the cultivation of seaweed, we also have the co-benefits of oxygenating the ocean. I might just I might just slip through the slides and try and get on to another key point that we've made. So that I think is worth making before my time's up. And that is that, on where we're up to in terms of our capacity to supply, we can feed from the assets that we've established in Tasmania. We have an 1,800 hectare marine lease with an option around that for a further 3,500 hectares. We have a land-based site with 660 ponds and the capacity to feed over 5 million head of cows. Where we're challenged at the moment is that's this solution that we've developed comes at a cost. And part of our challenge is how do we incentivize farmers to adopt these products, and how and what role, if any, does the government play in providing those pathways? If they set the 43% emissions reduction target, and there is exciting science coming out of the Australian peak scientific body, the CSIRO, how do we create that roadmap to commercialisation? And I feel, very much like when we started our business, we felt that we weren't going to wait for government to make the changes necessary or the changes that we wanted to see in the world, but rather the private sector drive that. Where we're finding now is that without that incentive, and simple incentives such as the access to a carbon credit from the methane or the avoided methane would deliver that outcome. And so, that where we're finding ourselves is we're back engaged with government to try to see how we can kind of remove some of these barriers to commercialisation.